Hello, this is Atsushi. This is the Sashiko Live Streaming on Thursday night in English. I will talk about Sashiko while stitching Sashiko in English. こんばんは、おはようございます。Sashiko のライブやっていこうと思います。英語版です。日本語版は明日やります。明日というか、日本時間の今夜ですね。よかったら聞いててください。Alright, thank you so much for coming to the Sashiko Live Streaming. I will talk about Sashiko, probably a little bit about Boro while me stitching, so you can watch me stitching, and I will I will talk about something you would like to listen if there's any request. Today I probably yes. The topic, well, just a second, I'm sorry. Let me check the yeah, that's good. So today I will talk about less definition and more imagination. I'm sorry, there's something. What's going on? What is this? Sorry, something's strange. Anyway, today I will talk about less definition and more imagination, which is probably going to explain what WabiSabi is a little bit for us. I have been asking to imagine what it is like behind the word Sashiko Boro, and it is understandable that we ask for the definitions all the time to get it right answers. It is very understandable, especially in the Western culture. Without definition, we cannot even have a discussion. So it is very understandable to have it. At the same time, in Japanese culture, sometimes definitions are not that important. Definition explains what it is. Sometimes in Japanese culture, we draw the outline or like form, very vague form of what it is, and we somewhat mutually understand each other. That is very strange, and I cannot explain how it is, but that's WabiSabi is like. I don't think I can explain what WabiSabi is critically, but we know what it is. We kind of feel what it is. So that's one of the important things about Sashiko as well, and I would like to talk about it as well while I'm stitching. Good to be getting together again. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming. Hello, hello. So I will move the camera to the stitching, and I will talk about less. Sorry, I will talk about less definition, more imagination. Where's my camera? Just a second. Ah, Sakura. Can you say hello to everybody? When I say hello to everybody. When I say hello to everybody. When I say meow. Can you say meow? You want to say meow? No? Seriously, nothing. You always talk. No meow, huh? Okay, we can go. Why? Now you sit down here. No, go. Okay, I will hide this camera. There we go. Hello, Z. Thank you so much for coming. Hello, everybody. Well, let me thread first. Let me thread first, and we will talk about while stitching. I forgot to mention this. I hope you can hear me. I forgot to mention this. But this is the live streaming where I talk about Sashiko while I do Sashiko stitching. So there's nothing going on this camera. I will be just stitching. Of course, it's a good material to watch and learn, but I will not teach anything, or it's not a webinar. So please bring something for yourself to stitch on. I hope you can join. We can share the time together over the internet. Like a place to be. We call it ibasho, and that's something I would like to create over Sashiko. So I hope we can spend time together stitching or crochet or knitting. It doesn't matter what, but that's something we can enjoy while doing something and learning each other. All right. Oh, I hope everybody's doing fine in this cold weather in the US. It's extremely cold this week. I'm gonna go to Florida this weekend. You don't want to see my room right now because it's a complete mess. But I'm gonna travel to Florida, but Florida is gonna be cold as well. So yeah, not cold, not as cold as the place I'm at right now. But I hope everybody is warm enough and stitching. Winter is a good time to stitch because we really don't go outside. And stitching outside is good too, but traditionally speaking, Sashiko was done over the winter. Many farmers work over the summer, I mean spring to fall outside, and they stitched fabric, mended fabric that they use over summer, especially over the winter. They stitch the fabric for the summer in the winter. So relaxing to stitch along with all. Thank you for the opportunity. It is my pleasure. So that's something I would like to create. So I do hope that everybody, not everybody, I do hope that I am communicating well enough to share what Sashiko is in a welcoming way. I talk about cultural appropriation. I talk about specific things. I keep saying that Sashiko in English is not enough. They're not wrong, but it's not enough. So since my words are kind of sort of strong, at least I'm not focusing on only positive. I'm trying to be honest, and I don't like fake positive, so I try to be honest. So I hope that I'm communicating. I am welcoming everybody, unless they wish to learn, they wish to hear what the Japanese would say. So since you're here, you're doing that already. So what I want you to do is pretty much enjoy. Okay. Sorry, let me read the comment a little bit, okay? It's good to have a comment. I really appreciate the comments so I can discuss more, but I have to probably stop stitching while I read the comments. Hello, Maggie. I have been giving your last discussion on Boro a lot of thought. Let me know if you would like me to share my feeling on what came up for. Sure. That'd be great. There's no right and wrong in the feelings. There's no right and wrong in Boro neither. So I want you to think about, like, thinking is really pretty much everything I want you to go through. Instead of letting somebody to define what it is, like, I want you to really think what it is for yourself, not for me, for yourself. Like, what is the point of learning the foreign language, foreign culture, if you're just following somebody foreigners defined? I don't really get that point, so it is really nice of you to think about it. Clark, Charlie, thank you. I am re-knitting 2 rows of sweater after I found mistake. I believe I heard you say no stitch, 2 stitch faster, stitch slower. Yeah, that's really. I don't think I've said that on the live streaming though. It's like 2 stitch faster, stitch slower is something I say in my class. Did you take my class? Probably you did, right? I don't remember. Well, maybe I have said that on the live streaming. It is very true. In order to stitch faster, you have to really stitch slow. But you have to really know what I'm talking about before you start stitching slower. If you stitch just slow, it's gonna be just slow. There's a way to. It's like a form that you have to remember. And each martial arts have the form, and once you follow that form, the slower you stitch, the faster stitching become. I know, which doesn't make sense at all, but I hope you can kind of feel like that. So there's no right and wrong in what I'm sharing. Although I say that Sashiko in English is not enough, it doesn't mean that what they are sharing, what you are learning in English, is not wrong. They are correct. They are the stories behind it. It's just not explaining the whole. And in order to explain the whole picture of Sashiko, I have to keep sharing the stories, many stories to support, to help us to kind of draw the outline of what Sashiko and Boro is. Usually those outline is easier to share when we share the same expectation, which is culture. So I don't need to spend this much time to explain what Boro or Sashiko is to the Japanese people because we share the same expectations. It's like mutual expectations already. But since we are different, since we are in the different culture, again, both culture is good. It's not about good or bad. I would like you to hear a lot of story and then think about it. It was 2 years ago. Wow. I probably said that on this live streaming then. Yeah. In order to stitch slow, in order to stitch fast, you have to really slower the stitch. Thank you. So I started I keep saying 2019, but in 2019, I had a pretty bad experience online on the social media. Back then, I did not know the word cultural appropriation, and I could not even explain why I was so hurt. Like I had a really much pain in my chest, like not a frustration, not anger, something bothered me, but I did not know what it was. It was pretty painful, actual pain. That happened in a series of someone asking in a group what is Sashiko, and there was a lot of reply to them, and there are a lot of reply to them in English. So they asked the person asked in English, and they replied in English. So it's all the non-Japanese discussion, and I tried to kind of contribute to that discussion by saying that in order to try to define what is right wrong, please try to stitch first. Because without stitching, nobody can get the core of Sashiko. This is like a conclusion of my Sashiko journey. I used to be not stitching, but without stitching, you will not be able to get the core. You have to really stitch. So I asked them to stitch, but they kind of kept pushing at that. So what is the definition? What is the right? What is the what is the tradition? What is not tradition? And I kept saying like if you please stitch, and I share the workshop, so please take it so I can share the stitching. But she was kind of pushing that I'm very mean because I was very mean because I did not answer her question. Well, in other word, I was not replying what she wanted to hear. Because the other people were replying that Sashiko is that, Boro is that. It's a very specific definition. Then the discussion went kind of farther and further, and I was kind of alone there, but I was kind of getting annoyed. I was getting annoyed, and I remember I wrote that. What did I write? Oh no, Sashiko is something. Sashiko is my identity, so please do not disrespect that. Um, there's no right and wrong, and please don't define it. And there were another people calling me arrogant and also overreacting. And then like I was kind of shocked. Why did they really ask for that kind of definition? It is very important to have definition, and we do have some definitions, but definition doesn't really explain the whole picture in some culture. I don't know about in English, but at least in Japanese culture, something non-verbal, something we cannot use the word, sorry, something we cannot express in the word exist. So Zen is one of those. Zen, roughly roughly defining what Zen is. Zen is to be empty, right? Empty is not really a good word for that. Mu is the Japanese word for that, but that does not explain, like, what do you mean by being empty? Well, there are a lot of stories what empty means, but it does not really explain the whole picture. Same as WabiSabi, same as Sashiko, or even Boro for that. So, in order to fully understand Sashiko or Boro, then probably one has to be fluent in Japanese because they have to go to Japan, they have to talk to Japanese. I don't want them to only listen to my stories in English. I want them to hear as many stories as possible in Japanese because not many Japanese Sashiko teachers can speak in English. What was I saying? But of course, you don't need the Japanese language to enjoy Sashiko. You don't need it. You can get a lot of information in English. And again, that's not wrong. So I'm happy for you to stitch in any way. But I just don't want them to define what it is even before thinking what it is. So, and I probably wrote that on the Instagram a few days ago, even a week ago. No, week ago I was talking about something else. So this week I probably wrote that somewhere. And after not a proofreading, after reading over and over what I wrote, I summarized it as less definition and more imagination. That's probably the key to share what Sashiko really is. It's another extreme analogy, but do you have those memories of you cooking with your grandma or mother? And of course some people use the measurement cup, like teaspoons or teaspoon and oh teaspoons or measuring cup. They use the measuring tools to cook. At the same time, some people really do not use any measuring things, so they kind of do it about this much. Kind of, when you sprinkle the salt, you don't really define what the number is, but kind of they know it already. Especially if you cook with the grandma or mother uh, long enough, you will also know what is the best amount for the sauce or that cooking. It's kind of like that. It's not exactly the same, but it of course can be written in the way Like it can be measured. It can be 2 teaspoons or 2 tablespoons of salt or soy sauce, but it kind of it kind of changes, amount changes, subtle, very subtle change when the ingredients are different. So not those home cooking, you do not really measure how much onion you're cutting. You don't know. You don't really measure how much. You don't measure the grams of potatoes you're stir frying. You probably count 3 potatoes or something. But those 3 is very ambivalent, very vague numbers in terms of definition. But you say that 3 potatoes, and then this much soy sauce. So in the Western culture, I believe that those communication without definition can happen, but it's very inefficient. As you can tell, it's very, very inefficient. There's a very big room of misunderstanding. It's unproductive. So it's not the best way to be successful in today's world, but it is what it is for that. And since we are enjoying the hand stitching, hand knitting, or like handcrafting, I think imagining those things, we have tons of time to imagine while stitching, so we can do that probably. And that's something we can do instead of somebody who is working very hard to have the innovations in technologies. I cannot be one of those people, but instead of that, I think we can think or imagine or care what it is. So this live streaming is a place for us to think. While you stitch, while you listen to my stories, I want you to think what it is and what you're doing and why you're doing it. I mean, it's fun. And that's pretty much it. That's not good enough. But by thinking, it's really interesting, but by thinking, this might be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, the more I think about one specific things, after all, I cannot dislike it too much. So let's say I hate Sashiko. I hated Sashiko. So by thinking a lot of Sashiko, hating, it ended liking it. Probably like the opposite of liking is probably ignoring. So thinking both way, liking or disliking, is gonna end up with in a good way. So that's what I mean, it is okay that if somebody doesn't like what I say, please, I mean, I don't mind that. But my stories are there, my voices are there, so I want them to think. If they think, they might get something. And the worst thing is pretty much ignoring, probably because of what I'm saying or because of what I'm doing. If we ask someone a question, we must be respect and willing to listen to their answer. It is true. It is true. But is it true? It is true. It is true in book. It is true. It's very true that when we ask someone a question, we must be respectful and willing to listen to their answer. That's a very true statement. But do we do that? I mean, I don't. I believe you do it, but social media is not the place like that anymore. Social, in person, and I don't know. Like 30 years ago, that's a very correct statement. Today, social media probably not accurate 100%. Like social media or even internet is a place to find the answer you like. It's not the place to find the answer or respect the people who you ask the question to. If the person answered the question, gave them they gave them the answer, it is up to the person who questioned either to get it or ignore it. And then those people will go to somewhere else and then ask the same question until they get the answers they want. That's how, like, there's no answers in this world anymore, because you can find a completely different, like, one fact but completely different opinions, answers, and it's up to us who choose. So I understand how people can be different in comparison to the people in 30 years ago, but that's probably why I'm suffering. Not suffering, I'm struggling. I would be suffering if there's nobody like you here, but since there are people like you, I am, I will never stop doing that. But there are many people who even block. No, I mean, I try to not to block people on this social media because, everybody, I want them to learn, not, I don't, of course, I want them to like me, but it's not my goal. I want them to know what Sashiko is. So I really do not block unless they are very much harmful. But there are people who blocks me out of everywhere because probably they don't want to read or they don't want to listen to what I say. And it's their choice, but that's kind of the thing I'm talking about. What is this sound? Oh, here. Answers are answers. That's why I don't really like definition is great, but I don't want to believe the definition that non-Japanese defined it. That's, don't let somebody define what you want to learn. That's really interesting. But at the same time, that's the only choice. That's only the availability, which we call it privilege. Uh, but, you know, that's another story. I imagine Sashiko stories when I listen to your Japanese videos. Thank you, Helen. That imagination is really what I ask for, I guess. Yeah, it is what I ask for. Since the Sashiko and Boro has at least 400 years of history, right? Could be 1500 or 1600, 1400. It's about 600 or 700 years when the Japanese started using the needle. As long as I remember, it's not academic research, so I might be wrong. But as long as the stitching happened, we may be able to consider it Sashiko. If we do so, it has almost 1400s of years of and history and story, and anything can be true, anything can be right based on where we look at. Sashiko is the stitching form for the strengthening the fabric. It is true. Sashiko is the stitching to mend the fabric. It is true. It depends on where and when. But only problem, only wrongness in this discussion is to define one Sashiko at one moment and one place as the whole picture of Sashiko. Then that definition is gonna filter everything around it, including the Sashiko, which is still alive. And that's what I want to prevent. Some people say they don't have to use the thimble. I cannot do Sashiko without tempo, so that's already filtering. And if I did not speak English, tempo may be gone. I don't know. That's not fair, yo. Yes, I think we tend to go where we will only hear what we want to hear. Do can't learn that way. That's a very good point. I kind of sometimes think that many people don't want to learn. Like learning is again, it's another definition issue, but I think learning in today's society, it has a little bit different definition. I might want to talk about definition, but like learning is sometimes not positive, right? I mean, it's great to learn in a positive atmosphere, but if we learn something new and it's completely different from what we have been doing, it can be painful. And it is okay that it's painful. It's a sign that we are learning. But there are quite, I wouldn't say many or majority, but they cannot take that pain. I cannot. I don't know if I can take that pain. Can I take that pain? Like for example, my writing is not good in English, especially when I was in the university. I had to go to the writing center to get a better grade. My writing itself was bad. However, I was good at writing in Japan in English. I was better in the class. So whenever I get a lot of red pencil on my paper, I got really defensive. Defensiveness is the kind of trigger to avoid to not avoid defense. There are many people who are defensive in this world. Probably that's the easier way to define that. I was very defensive when I asked them to correct my English, but at the same time I was not happy receiving it. That's horrible. I'm sorry for them. I'm sorry for my English like ESL. They're not even ESL. There was a writing center there. But yeah, that's learning is probably something different today. That's scary. But there's a very famous story about. I think it's okay to share it here, but it's not my story. But there's Chinese or some. I think that's Tibet. That they go to the one student goes to the master and for asking the questions of some life or some um, I forgot about details, but student went to the master to ask a question, and the master kindly offered a tea in a small cup of the teacup, and then he stopped pouring the tea when the tea is almost full. Uh, when the student asked the master many questions, he stood pouring the tea over the fulfilled cup. Of course, the tea will be splitting from out of the cups, and the student said, "Master, yes, like this is enough. Tea is enough. I have enough tea." And then he said that your mind is like this teacup. So, oops, this anecdote, this story tells us that we have to empty the cup first to pour to receive something new. But we don't really have the ability to empty the cup. We go to Target to get a bigger mug if we have to have something new. Or we kind of we try to solve the problem in a different way. So we start blaming that this is because the teacup is too small, I don't know, but emptying something we have already is sort of difficult thing to do in today's society, and it is for me as well. So 2 years ago, because you encouraged learning Japanese and learning the culture, I became a student of Japan. Student of Japan. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not laughing because of this, but I student of Japan is a little. I just became a little bit confused. Uh, I have learned so much through YouTube books, learning the stories. I don't know what Japan is. The reason I'm kind of like cracked is that what is Japan? It's love and hate. I love Japan and I hate Japan. Well, since I haven't been back to Japan for 8 years, I think the love part is stronger. But when I was in Japan, I was not really happy. I mean, I was not really in love with Japan. So it's not only a good thing about. Um, okay, let me rephrase it. I think it is very important to get get out of the uh, dualism of good and bad. That's probably the things we have to do for the first time, for the beginning. When we talk based on the judgment, either it is good or bad, probably we will misunderstand each other. Might be subtle, but what I share about Japanese culture, Japanese language, Japanese thing is that it is just what it is. I do not want to define the story is good or bad. I mean, for some people, it might be very amusing or fascinating, but at the same time, that can be the issue of romanticizing or even fantasizing what Japan is. Again, it has a lot of bad point. Not a bad, but it's a lot of bad point for us. It's not always good. It has always the two side. But I want you and I want to share what Sashiko is based on that. I mean, anybody can be teacher now, so you know there are a lot of people who's probably teaching Sashiko. Probably they learn from this video and then they're teaching it. I don't know about it, but I mean, please copy though. What I share is perfectly fine. Just copy it. I mean, that'd be great. It is very much appreciated for them to take the classes, and I really appreciate it. That support my that makes my ends meet. But at the same times, please copy, but just don't teach based on what you copied. Not only because, not because that I do not want you to make money. It's just the teaching requires teaching comes with responsibility, because the students, if you take the class, the student, they believe the teacher as the correct answer. Unless the teacher define that they are talking about one specific things, that can be a very, very big um, shift or even filtration in culture. So the fact that you can stitch is not a you. I'm sorry. I'm gonna stop using you. I'm not talking about anybody specific here. Uh, when they start thinking that they know everything about Sashiko, that's the beginning of the ending of learning. That will end up with cultural appropriation, and that's probably the only one case I can think of as a cultural appropriation. By the people who stopped learning, by the people who decided to ignore what it is, what it was, what it might be. Otherwise, please enjoy, please copy if you can, please, call it Sashiko if you want to. I'm not gonna say whatever is fine, but I do not think the cultural appropriation is based on what. It's based on how we approach it. Based on what, yeah. That's a lot of talking. So yes, so this is a very important message. I will probably keep saying this phrase throughout this year. Less definition and more imagination. I kind of like it. I like it how it sounds. It's not that difficult to imagine once you but don't you think that we kind of lose the ability to imagine? I feel the same way too. Um, I was born in 1980s, so we did not have Google or Alexa or Siri or anybody around there. So when we wanted to know something, we had to use encyclopedia, go to the bookstore or library for that matter, or ask the parents, ask somebody, and then ask for the information. Now, when the question pops out, what we do is Google, right? Like Google, what is Sashiko, what is Boro, what is that? Um, Google is based on the programming, so they cannot function on non-defining world. So they always give them the definitions first. If I write something that I cannot define Sashiko, they will not push my website up to the Google result. And Siri is not gonna talk like this for hours and hours, because what they need is the brief answer, and that's what the audience, that's what we user requires. So do I. I'm not blaming anybody for that. We are living in that world where we can get the answers almost immediately. But the point is that we do not know if that answer is either filtered or not. Or I think the answers are most likely accurate from the Google. But without thinking about it, thinking deeper, imagining, something may be lost. Especially when you try to research or try to look for the cultural perspective from your foreign culture. And I think that's the reason I got a really sad and sort of, I wasn't even angry. That's the reason I felt very strange when somebody kept asking for the answers. So I think I felt like I was treated like the Google. And she kept typing, what is Sashiko, what is Sashiko, what is Sashiko, and I keep replying to her. There's no such a thing without stitching. But we live in a very interesting world, and Sashiko is the one thing which is far, far, far from that. And it's so interesting. It's kind of ironic too that Sashiko became popular in the world where there are always definitions. I hope it's balancing it. I don't know. Yes, the more we know, The more we know, the more we know we don't know. It's a very good thing. And that's why I don't really say my Sashiko is the best. Like I'm pretty confident what I'm teaching because I have this experience for 30 years. But I can only speak on behalf of my Sashiko that I grew up with, and I do not teach others. Um, there's a lot of kind of Sashiko, kogin zashi, hishi zashi, hitome zashi, shonai zashiko. There's a lot of Sashiko, but I do not teach them. I teach hitome zashi, but I don't think one can teach both kogin and Sashiko. That's. I hope they're not teaching as if they are kind of similar. It's completely different. I mean, it has of course similarity, but it's a really different culture, different origin, different understanding, different techniques. So I hope that, well, for that I cannot help. Well, I gotta do what I can do first to keep sharing what Sashiko is here. And one day, I mean, I don't know if it's me or somebody else later on, but one day there will be a time to think what Sashiko is again. Like there are tons of there are many Sashiko artisans, tons of Sashiko artisans in Japan, and most of them are trying to be anonymous. And it is how it is, so we have to appreciate, we have to respect that. At the same time, I would like to sort of summarize those voices, stories, but it requires a lot of time to think. It's not something we can memorize or we can get a good grade. We really have to think, which means imagine. When we imagine how Sashiko has been established, saying we can use whatever thread is a little bit too ignorant, I guess. It is true that we can use any Sashiko thread, but it's a choice. Whatever thread is fine is a very irresponsible phrase because there are many people who spend their life to develop the thread of for Sashiko. I mean, I keep saying thread does matter. The many people start, selling. There are many Sashiko thread all of a sudden. That's probably because if they put the Sashiko on the name tag, they sell better. But not all the Sashiko thread is the same. They are, different. It's only thread, but they are quite different. One is good and one is not so good. And there's a reason because there are people who spend 30 years or even 40 years behind that. There are a lot of stories about it too. And that's something we have to, not have to, I would like to pass it down so we can choose. I don't want to go back to the world where we have to make thread for our Sashiko. I mean, as much as I like preparing the Sashiko project, I do not want to make Sashiko thread by myself. I would like to keep using this thread so I don't have to worry about the thread. Did you stitch or watch others stitch as a child? Both. Both. But I was not trained for that matter. I did not have any curriculum or any school that I went to. I had to, be there and I had to stitch, and I got so much judgment and criticism. It's it might be I don't want to make a misunderstanding, but it's more like a women's work. Sashiko is, I will talk about it more later, but Sashiko is for the women, and I was a boy, and many people made fun, not a fun of it, but they were critical or judgmental that I am the boy for that. But my family wanted me to do it because I was firstborn. But yeah, I did not like it. Naturally, I did not like it. But that's another privilege I have. I never went through those moments that I couldn't stitch. I always can stitch. That's the whole point of this. Like when I started, I mean, I did not know what to teach because stitching like this was like changing my pants. Anybody can do it in the morning. It's really normal. And since I was not really, in that circle, I never had a friend who liked stitching because I did not like stitching until recently. So I did not really know that what is what is things that I can teach. I mean, of course, right now I understand it, and thanks to many people, I understand what it is, and I developed my classes based on that. So it is very sort of comprehensive for that, organized, structured. But at the beginning, I really didn't know what to teach. So that's my privilege. And again, privilege itself is not good or bad. And I do have it, so that's good. And the privilege without imagination is the harmful one. Yeah, I don't have to probably talk about it because there are many people who are talking about it. Privilege without imagination is the bad thing. Privilege with imagination is that's not a bad thing at all. It's actually a good thing. Again, without the power, we cannot change the world. So it is you who can help me to spread the words. Recently, I have been watching more and more historical sewing videos. I have seen a few videos on hand sewing, learning about the change in quality of fabric, thread, and needles is pretty interesting. It is very interesting. I don't know about the other world, but in Japan, especially in the Mingei folk art, they split artisans into categories. For example, the one artisans focus on one thing, let's say stitching. One artisans focus on the pattern preparation. One is focusing on cutting the fabric. One is maybe focusing on clipping the thread off. So one of the description about Mingei Japanese folk art is that it is divided into the small group of artisans, and artisans take full responsibility in what they do. So there was the artisans who made the thread, there was the artisans who made the needles. So those professionals were so proud of what they did. And they did not really necessarily focused on or looked at the whole picture, like the outcome, but they were very much proud of what they did for their entire life, probably generations. Now, because of the internet, unfortunately, it may be lost because we do not live like that anymore. Well, And again, internet is not bad at all. Actually, I love internet. Without it, I don't know how to live. But it's just the different, and it is good that it's different, and we have to really think what we can do about it. In order to protect one culture, we have to protect suppliers first. Now, stitches, for example, Sashiko stitches can be, it's the matter of time. So I can train one Sashiko stitches in month probably. They can be Sashiko. They can be as good as I am in terms of stitching. They can be as good as I am very very in a short terms of period. But in order to make the thread I love, I don't know if I can redo it if somebody stopped doing that. Somebody has to be the apprentice of the master, and then first time easy, possible to do it. Well, but this is probably the change we have to accept. No, I don't accept. I will do everything to prevent that. Not to prevent, but to preserve somehow. I learned to mend by watching my grandma. Watching your video has interested me to learn Sashiko. I've been practicing. By the way, I am indigenous from Mexico. Do you have any fabric for sale? I think I can make a shipping to Mexico, and I do have a fabric the best fabric we think the fabric we think the best for the Sashiko stitching. Most of the fabric we use for the product, for the not a product items, are with this kind of indigo dyed cotton fabric. This is for sale on my website upcyclestitches.com, and you can get it. I do believe that we can make a shipment to Mexico from the US. But fabric is secondary. The thread is probably most important. As I'm stitching different fabric today right now. Although I'm recommending this fabric, I'm stitching in a completely different fabric, so I don't want to be contradictory. The fabric is kind of secondary. Oh, you live in USA? I'm sorry. If you live in the USA, please come to my upcyclestitches.com. Well, if you Google my name or upcycle stitches, or probably you can find it on the description area from this live streaming. It's upcyclestitches.com. This is something I have never actually just popped up right now. I haven't even wrote this one on the Patreon because I thought this was very miscellaneous. It's not a big deal. But there's a reason I did not put Sashiko on my business name. It's my wife's. My wife made this upcyclestitches.com. Not .com. Upcycle Stitches is my kind of business name. I do have a LLC, and with that name, it's the business name. But my wife decided that, and we decided that was a sort of a big thing to not to add Sashiko in it. I made a mistake. て、まあいいか。Of course, I made a mistake because it has been just 1 hour. It's my kind of, how do you call that? Not jinx. Uh, it's kind of joke type of thing, but I usually make one mistake per 1 hour, so it's about time. It was about time to make a mistake. That has been 1 hour. I will probably stop doing live streaming in 15 minutes or so. I have to prepare for the workshop, which I probably don't do it tonight. I will probably go to sleep after this, but I really want to see the student and the people who will take the online, the 3 days workshop. I really would like to see them, meet them, spend time together. That'd be fantastic time. But I don't want to travel. I I really don't want to travel much. Do you think about the importance? Do you talk about the importance of thread and how it was made in your workshop? I do. I do talk about the significance of the thread and the stories about thread as well. I do talk about it, but at the same time, I think I do have a videos for that. Um, I think I do have a video on this channel. Um, I think it's Sashiko Story 3. There's a lot of Sashiko story, like about 10 of those. And one of them is why Sashiko thread or thread does matter, or like something like that. But thread is really, really important. I mean, many people come to me like, why is my stitching so bad? Why do your stitch looks good? I would love to say that that the result is because of me. Is I'm better than they are. That's since I'm experienced, it's better, and the user not. I would like to say that, but the truth is, it's because of the thread and understanding the thread. It's sad, but yes, I would like to say that because I am master, that's why my stitches are better. That's not the truth. I think if anybody use this needle and this thread, their stitches are gonna be pretty good. I mean, of course, they have to learn some basics, but so yes, I do talk about it on my class, on my online class, as well as there's a video for that. Mistake or creative decision, design decision. Yep. Or I kind of justify my mistake in a different way. I honestly, it's perfectly fine. I'm not judging anybody, but I do not consider it as the creativeness. My mistake is my mistake. But I don't take it as a bad thing because mistake means that I wasn't focusing on stitching so much. And that's the key. That's a whole point of, not a whole point, but that's one of the very important part of my Sashiko teaching. Like today's Sashiko world, people teach how to do Sashiko to make specific size of stitches one by one, right? I don't if I'm wrong, please correct me. But they have a specific size as the correct size, and they have to follow that to make even stitches. I don't think I can focus like that more than 20 minutes. I mean, no human can do it more than 30 minutes. And if they do not focus, the result will be uneven, and then that's gonna be bad. Of course, people dislike Sashiko at some point. No. It's opposite. You have to not to concentrate first. Not first. You have to have a moment to not to concentrate at all. The risk of making mistake goes extremely high, but that's the time that you completely give up your control, and that's the start. That's the start of good Sashiko. I'm sorry, I keep saying. I don't know why it sounds like an advertisement, but my workshop teaches um, how to make it happen with the forms. I think my brain is pretty much, well, I'm reading my presentation over and over again. That's why probably my brain is very much like presentation mode right now, workshop mode. I agree that find that my stitches look better with this thicker thread than the thinner thread also feels better. We'll go looking for that thread story. Thank you. Z, you're here. Thank you. You've been here all the time. Thank you. You're correct. I have heard many teachers say the correct size is no more than 1.4 inch. I would go out of my mind if every stitch had to be measured. It's, I mean, I teach Sashiko, and I think I can do it. I mean, I can, but I don't want to. And the Japanese people did that. I don't like imagine that. Imagine that. Please imagine it. Like the Sashiko is for these, the people who lived. Oh, thank you, Z. Thank you so much. The Sashiko is the practice for the sort of the people in the northern part of Japan. I used to say poor or poverty, but my friend, she said that I'm her friend. So I think it's okay to call her friend. My dear friend, Wada Sensei, Miss Yoshiko Wada, kind of corrected me that I shouldn't use poor and poverty, and I'm not really good at being corrected about Sashiko, especially my Sashiko. It's kind of you know I accept the suggestions, but it was my first time to have a little bit of discomfort in learning. So we had a little bit of serious discussion for 45 minutes or so, and then I changed my mind. She changed my mind completely. I agreed with her for that. So I do not use the poor or poverty anymore. But anyway, the Sashiko was for those people who lived in very harsh conditions like severe winter, cold weather, or limited resources. If it's not a if, just imagine it. Just imagine it. You are living in a very very old house, very a lot horrible insulation, horrible insulation. Um, there's not enough fabric. There's not enough fabric to patch the blanket that your child is sleeping in. You know that the child is gonna freeze that night if there's a hole, and your job is to fix it. Your job is to make fabric stronger by stitching. Do you care if the stitches has to be one like 1/4 of the inches? No, that's luxury. That's the privilege we talk about. The choice is the. I mean, of course, there is Sashiko that the focus on this specific size that was developed later in the history. They exist. They are there, and that's not wrong. But that doesn't explain the whole picture of Sashiko. And the teacher is responsible to explain what kind of Sashiko they are teaching. They cannot just say that they are teaching the Sashiko, because it eliminates the other type of Sashiko, which some people really do. My mother never cared about the teacher's size. My father never. No, he was alcoholic, but he never cared about Stitch's size. I mean, alcoholic was not necessary to say. Sorry, I'm gonna read a comment. Is this the one about thread? Which one? This live streaming is not about the thread, but there is this stories. I don't know if you can paste the link here. Waiting to take your workshop in person. That'd be great. I will see you soon. I don't know where I can do it. After after COVID. I don't know if I can offer it anytime, anywhere. But one day. There are several cancellations for the workshop coming up because of the Omicron thing, so still not the best time to arrange those things. In older days, did people have access or money for goods thread for borrow? Yes and no. It depends on when you are talking about. So our Sashiko, the Sashiko we practice is a little bit different from the Sashiko that people who had to make borrow. For example, our Sashiko, like the Sashiko artisans I grew up, about 60 of them, everybody, including myself, hated borrow. We hated, we despised, almost disrespected borrow. We actually got a kind of fight, very big. This not a kind of argument that there was somebody who came to our shop and asked to make us borrow, and some of the artisans got really, really upset. And I wanted to take that offer because the payment was pretty good, but she was very angry at me that I was even talking to them about the possibility of making borrow. And so our Sashiko is sort of almost transition to the modern borrow. So they made the Sashiko, they made the thread for Sashiko, and we kind of industrialized it. We don't make thread anymore by hand, right? I'm not making thread by hand. I'm not twisting the thread by my hand, but we did kind of make it more like commercialized. So those people who made borrow probably did not have a choice to purchase the thread, because in other words, the thread was not something to purchase, I guess. They did not have enough money for that. But we tried to recreate those threads. Why those threads last long? Why do their stitches looks good? So, in order to have a good thread, we studied thread. So the question is a little bit reversed for that. So the answer to the question is, Probably no, but it depends on where. Depends on when you're looking at Sashiko. If you're looking at 400 years ago, probably not. If you're looking at 50 years ago, yes. We have such an abundance of clothing now, it's hard to think that at one point all thread were made by drop spindles, let alone weaving it cloth. Yeah, I mean, it became a choice. So sometimes it's a very harsh way to criticize myself, but I sometimes say that I will never be the artisans I grew up with because I am stitching out of choice, right? I don't have to stitch for tomorrow. I don't have to stitch for my life. I choose to stitch. That's already a very big different background. Choice is sort of the sign of abundance. Abundance. Because of the abundance, we have a choice. So only things we can do is just imagine how it would be and respect that people who live there. So I keep saying, everybody repeat after me. Less definition, more imagination. I'm sorry, I don't want to make a cult, so that's a joke. Here, quilts were made from anything that could be found out of necessity, very practical. Yes, so that is also a part of the Sashiko culture too. So it really depends on when and where you look at. But there are Sashiko which requires very specific thread. Not a requires, which spend so much time to make a good thread. And I don't want to lose it because that's in order to recreate it, probably that's a lot of work. It's easy to keep rather than recreate it. So it's my sort of job to leave this alone, not leave this alone, to sort of protect it, I think, for that matter. It's really selfish reason. I do not want to live in the life where I do not have this thread. I really don't. No, I don't want to. 2021, the reason I was not so much active on YouTube was because of that. It's a long story, so the long story is available. I thought I wrote it. I think I wrote it on the Patreon, but it's a long story. Your site is sold out on most fabric. I probably do not restock them because I cannot. The COVID was not the best thing for many of them. But the indigo fabric is probably not out of stock. Let me check. If so, I am doing wrong thing. Just a second. Yes, it's. I recommend my website, but many things are out of stock. Yes, and tomorrow I will probably have to close the store because of my trouble this weekend. Yep, they are all gone. But the best cotton fabric for Sashiko is this thread I was talking about. And that's something I can probably, hopefully, sincerely, hopefully supply it continuously. like I'm I don't know if it's a good way to say it, but I have a business. I'm a business person. At the same time, I am not. My goal is to not to make a living out of selling the fabric with thread. It is very important for me to sell them so that I can keep buying from them, so that I can use that. I really need them. So is my mother. So is everybody around us. And it's really appreciated that many people are, supporting us for that. So I don't want to say everything. Of course, I make a living out of your, support. So, but a lot of many big part of the um, sales I receive is gonna go to directly to Japan. And I, since I'm trying to support very small companies, which happen to be our suppliers, some of the fabrics can be discontinued very quickly and sold out. And I probably may be able to restock them, but I don't have that much. If they have to restart production, then my budget is not big enough for that because they have to spend like 3 months for that, and I have to buy it out. So it's kind of difficult to do it in the COVID situation. But one day I will save money and make it happen. I have been holding the thread just in case it doesn't become available anymore. We need to keep the artisans in business. Yeah. Yes. Hoarding is I'm hoarding too. It's more like a trauma experience, PTSD thing. But there are good people out there, so it's gonna be okay. I hope. It was okay before COVID, but yeah. So yeah, most of the fabrics are not available, but one fabric which we use it here, like this fabric. The pattern is not on it, so I just draw the pattern by myself. And sometimes I don't know if it's a good thing to say, but when we watch some TV sometimes, and there's a company saying that 10% of this sales gonna go to the charity, or something, that's a beautiful concept. That's a very good concept that our choice of purchasing you know the our choice of the purchase is going to contribute to some charities or some non-profit organization is a very good um, kind of circulation. That's a very sustainable way to care for the society. But I sometimes feel like, well, all of the profit is gonna go to the Japanese artisans, so I don't even have to mention that. I'm not gonna say 10% of this sales is gonna go to the artisans. It's gonna go. It's gonna go everywhere. I keep saying so. You don't have to hear it anymore. But if I start showing off some expensive watch, or if I start sharing like I got a Lamborghini or I got a private jet, sue me, please. I went too crazy. I went out of my brain. Use this video to as the proof for the refund or something. It's really not. If that's my goal, if I wanna be extremely rich, Sashiko is not the choice. I shouldn't be spending this much time in Sashiko. I mean, money is important. Money is extremely important to make what I want to happen. But if I start showing off, something expensive, I would like to have a studio one day, and that's a lot of money. But That's my goal. That's my dream, to have studio somewhere instead of my room here, where my family sleeps upstairs. And possibly a little bit bigger car might be a good idea to have. But that's about it. So again, like, if the money is the goal, don't do Sashiko. It's a horrible choice. Trust me, I have done Sashiko from the business perspective and also the artisan's perspective. It's a horrible idea to do Sashiko for the business. I mean, you probably can make enough money if you really do hard. If you work hard, probably you can make money while the trend is ongoing. Yes, probably you can make a living. But if your goal is to make a luxury car, no, don't do it. Maybe a pre-sale, take order and get half up front. If you explain like that, I would order under this. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I might do that. It's just a lot of work to do. But yeah, I will. I may. I cannot promise that I will do it, but I may do that. I really want to focus on this fabric for now because it was in the risk to lose it, and I don't want to lose it anymore. But yeah, sure. I mean, there are ways to get another fabric, but it's kind of sounds like excuse. I'm sorry, this sounds like excuse, and it is actually excuse. Um, I do not want to buy the fabric I do not use. I want to buy the fabric I use only. And as of now, most of the project I do is on this fabric or the vintage fabric or the fabric I already had. So my passion to get the new fabric is not as high as previous. Like when I was offering the workshop every 3 weeks, many people ask me to bring, fabric to them. So that's sort of, it was fun to share a lot of fabrics with the others. But now, since I more like focus on stitching, well, I mean that's an excuse. I will. This is a very important. I will. It's a request. You're saying that you'll be a customer. Of course, I will do it. Sorry about that. Okay, hour and a half of stitching. I think that's good. Thank you very much for the comments. Thank you very much for the participation. I hope I didn't say anything stupid because this is gonna be an edited version. I will not edit the stitching. I will not edit the word. So anybody can learn by watching it. And again, if you can, I don't want to do something, more than necessary. But if you can afford to take my class, please consider taking my online class. I will be there and I will teach throughout, unless you don't give up. As long as you don't give up. I mean, you're busy. Everybody's busy right now, so it might not be the best time to start it. But at the same time, I will try to follow up as much as I can. So the online class is available. In-person workshop, the one this weekend, not this weekend, this week, next Monday, this coming Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, no, Wednesday. There, I have a 3 days workshop in Florida, Stuart, Florida. There are still some seat left, I believe. And after that, I will be in QuiltCon. I do not know if there's any seat left. Probably not. After that, I do not have any plan. But I really do not kind of Omicron kind of freaked me out. So I don't have any plan yet, but I will go anywhere that somebody want me to go. Just a second, I'm thinking, what should I do? Jump するか。And Thursday night is the live streaming here on YouTube. I cannot promise that I'll do every Thursday night, but almost every Thursday night I want to make time very specific so that it's gonna be predictable. And if you have any questions, any kind of topic that you want to think together, I am happy to take that. Appreciate that. Just this. Sorry. I banged the camera. Oh yeah, if you're watching this as an archive, please leave the comment if you have any questions or a topic request. I do not know what I can share because I do not know what the sort of the request or interest is there. But today's key phrase is less definition and more imagination. It's kind of easy to get the sort of the answers, not even answer truth, when we imagine enough. But when you imagine, I want you to think through instead of focusing on one moment in the timeline, or putting in everything in the order chronologically is very important, and that's something I'm trying to do right now too. Which Sashiko is which, and that's probably the things. That's the thing I talked in the Sashiko webinar, which I may be able to offer that again. But there was a 1 hour webinar I did it last year, explaining sort of that chronological timeline of what Sashiko is in comparison to the other Sashiko too. So I had that kind of that information as well. Do you think this is going to be borrowed in the future? I don't know. I've been using it a lot, but it does not become borrow yet. Please, I keep saying that borrow is not the technique. Please don't misunderstand that. Borrow is just the result of stitching, and we call this stitching Sashiko. So borrow is not the technique. Okay, I think that's just a second. Okay, so okay, 1.5. Wow, has been one thing that I have to warn or about Sashiko, something negative, not negative, something bad, not bad, something you have to be careful about Sashiko is that it's a time eater. It eats time. It does really eat. Like if I start stitching at night, I kind of keep going, saying like, okay, one more line, one more thread, one more stitch, and one more episode of Office, one more, always one more, and you don't have to be awake, fully awake to do it. So it kind of can keep going, and as a result, you lose your sleeping time. And that's not a good thing. So, can you show what's the other side it looks like before you... Oh, the other side of this? Sure. This is quite big, so I will hang it in front of me. It's not patterned yet at all, though. You see that? Sakura, don't play with it. It's forever. I don't see what I'm showing. So. Okay. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for spending time together. This was the Sashiko Live Streaming on Thursday night. And I think I can come back next Thursday, although that's the day I travel back from Florida, which I may not be able to. I cannot do the live streaming on Thursday. I'm sorry, I cannot probably do the live stream on Thursday. But if I can, I will put it on the schedule. If I cannot do it next week, I will come back on the following week. Okay, Sakura, say bye to everybody. Okay, thank you so much for everybody. And I hope we can see each other soon. Okay, so have a good night. Have a good night. Bye bye.